This meeting is cablecast live on Charter Communications Cable TV Channel 8 and is being re-recorded to be replayed the following Monday and Friday at 1 p.m. on Charter Channel 71 and Comcast Channel 25. Meetings can also be viewed from the city's website, cityofcapitola.org. Our technician tonight is Alex IED. As a reminder, please turn off your cell phones during the meeting, and if you come to the podium to speak, please be sure to sign your name so we get that correct for the records. Unfortunately, Linda, our chairperson, is out of town tonight, so I will try to do justice on how she normally runs a meeting. So we'll start off with roll call.
Commissioner Westman? Here. Commissioner Ortiz? Here. Commissioner Newman? Here. Chairperson Walsh?
Here. Thank you. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance now, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this is an opportunity for oral communications, and first we'll start off with any additions or deletions to the agenda.
This evening we're going to ask that the Climate Action Plan be continued to the October 1st meeting.
Okay, that was item 5C.
Yes.
Okay. Next we have our opportunity for public comments. This is an area where, for something that's not on the agenda tonight, if you'd like to stand up and come to the podium and make a comment, we can limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anything that's not listed on the agenda to be spoken about tonight. Do we have anybody who wants to come and speak tonight? Sounds like everybody wants to be here for things that are on the agenda. How about commissioner comments? Anything on commissioner comments? Staff comments?
I have one comment. On August 21st, we had the Office of the Historic Preservation come to town, and we had a successful preservation training. They went over preservation programs, including certified local government programs, how to create a survey and inventory, also creating effective ordinances, in which they followed up with me after saying they would be happy to review our ordinance once it's drafted, and also went over local incentives and state incentives and federal. So it's a successful meeting, and there was a lot of positive feedback after. So
Thanks, Kate. I think a few of us were in attendance, and that was very informative. I know I learned a lot from the process, so that was nice to be able to host that here in Capitola. Okay, we're going to move on to item 3, approval of the minutes, and we actually have 2 sets of minutes to approve tonight. First for our regular meeting, which was July 16th, 2015.
I'll make a motion to approve the July 16th. Can we do them both together? The July 16th and the July 20th minutes.
I will second the motion.
And under July 16th, I have just a small correction to make, and that is on page 5, item B, Bay Avenue. I recused myself from that, and so I did not make a motion on that. I don't know who did, but I know I didn't.
It is the same as the initial consent item. So they will both reflect the same motion, first and second.
Okay. Great.
Okay, so we have motion first and second. All those in approval?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes, so very good. The next item is a consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered by the Planning Commission to be routine and will be enacted in one motion in the form listed below. There will be no separate discussion on these items prior to the time of the Planning Commission votes on the action unless members of the public or the Planning Commission request specific items to be discussed for separate review. Items pulled for the separate discussion will be considered in the order listed on the agenda. So do we have anybody that would like to pull an item from the consent calendar?
I would like to pull item B from the consent calendar for a question, and I might be able to get that solved and we can move forward with it. My question is, and we've really never asked this before, but the neighbor who signed the letter that they have no problem with this development, I'd like to find out if that person is a renter or the actual owner of that building.
So,
Okay, great. All right, great. That's the only question I had about it. Thank you.
So if that's it for the consent calendar, I guess we can make a motion for approval.
I'll move the consent calendar.
We have a motion, a second?
Motion?
Go ahead.
I'll make a second.
Second, all those in approval?
Aye.
And no notice, so that passes. Very good, so that was a quick portion. We're moving on now to the public hearing portion of this. It looks like we have a number of people tonight, so on an item, if you would like to get up and speak at the podium, we ask you to, one, sign your name, and then we're going to limit your discussion to 3 minutes, just to make sure everybody gets an opportunity and we get this through the meeting. So we're going to start off with item 5A, which is 154 Cortez Street, and we'll start with the staff presentation.
Okay, thank you, Chair Welsh and Commissioners. The application before you tonight is a conditional use permit and a coastal development permit for an existing large community care residential facility with up to 13 residents within an existing single-family home. I want to clarify that they have been operating as a 13-unit residential as a large community care residential facility. This came up in terms of there was a review due to a code enforcement where we realized there was not a conditional use permit on site. I've had quite a few calls asking if the use is getting intensified, and it is not. It's going to, their plan is to operate as they have been. So in this image you can see the home on the left. And you can see it's a typical single-family home, and it's located next to Cortez Park. The access to Cortez Park goes along the side property line. The Sober Living Environment, SLE, is operated by SoberWorks. At full capacity, the house has 13 women ranging in age from 18 to 65, one of which is the house manager, and then there's also a second employee that is the assistant manager that lives on site. This subject property is zoned R1, single-family residential. A community care residential facility with more than 7 residents requires a conditional use permit and must comply with the requirements of a large community care residential facility within the R1 zone. I just want to clarify that this property does not meet the definition of a assisted housing facility under the state regulations. So when looking at a large-scale community care residential facility within Capitola, these are allowed with up to 6 residents, but a facility serving 7 or more residents requires a conditional use permit. In reviewing a conditional use permit, the Planning Commission may add reasonable conditions with respect to location, design, siting, maintenance and operations of the use for protection of the adjacent properties and in the public interest. So you take a look at the surrounding neighborhood, and if there are any impacts of the use, your appropriate conditions can be tied to the conditional use permit. The on-site, the parking requirement within the code, and I'm going to go through a couple of the items that we've heard there could possibly be issues with. So parking is the first. The requirement for a community care facility is 1 space per employee not residing at the house, and an additional space as determined by the Planning Commission. I originally thought there was only 1 employee, and I think the code incorrectly states not. I think it's supposed to say residing at the home. So 1 space for each employee residing at the home, and there are 2, in fact, that reside at the home. So under the code, we require 2 spaces for a community care facility. And then in terms of development, when the home was built, because it's a 2,500 square foot single-family home, it's required to have 3 spaces. So you're looking at the development regulations of 3 spaces, and then with the use, there's really 2 spaces required for the use. So, and here, there's, as I stated, there's 1 house manager and 1 assistant manager, and then the site itself, when they built it, they didn't just build 3 spaces, there's 4 spaces. There's 2 covered within the garage and then 2 on the driveway. So within your packet, you received the house parking plan, and the 2 spaces in the driveway are designated for the house manager and the assistant manager. There are 2 spaces in the garage that are not utilized for parking. They're utilized for laundry and storage. And I was updated that there was a miscommunication that the interior of the garage is not utilized as a smoking area. Smoking areas only take place outside of the home. So it had stated in the staff report that that was utilized for smoking on rainy days. And then on-street parking is for all other residents of the house. And I want to clarify that within their plan, they identified that they had worked with different neighbors to try to figure out where the least impactful on-street parking would be. As the city, we don't regulate, we don't assign any parking in that neighborhood, so really within our purview, we can't tie conditions to on-street parking. For safety, the fire department went out and did an inspection. There were, I think, a couple maybe fire alarms or detectors that had to be changed out, or batteries, and there was a second inspection and the site passed. Also, police department was informed that we were going through the review of a conditional use permit. Chief Escalante is here this evening to answer any questions you may have, but in reviewing the proposal, there were suggested conditions to mitigate impacts from the police department that they suggested. So the large one that you see throughout these conditions is really tied to the on-site management of the home, to make sure that there's a on-site house manager there that's responsible for the day-to-day operations, that they have a relationship and they're open to hearing from the neighbors. They ensure that the proper tenant behavior, that they're readily available. And then there's also quite a few, and also that they're managing the residents to ensure that curfews and the house rules are properly followed. And then also conditions tied to repairs and storing of vehicles, etc. In terms of number of residents, we've heard from, we've had complaints about the number, that there's 13 residents and the impacts of 13 residents with vehicles. So just to be clear, there's one house manager, there's one assistant manager, and then there can be up to 11 residents. There's 2 bedrooms that have, it's a 5-bedroom house, there's 2 bedrooms that it can occupy, 3 people can occupy, and then 3 bedrooms with room, 2 beds in each, so up to 11. So in reviewing this application, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit as conditioned for 154 Cortez Street. Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions of staff right now?
I do have a question of staff. Why does the state not consider this a community care facility?
So there are certain requirements within a community care facility when you look at affected persons and the definition of affected persons. And because there is not a maximum length of stay, there are certain triggers within this that don't meet that definition, because there's no maximum length of stay. It's not solely occupied by persons of low income, which is another requirement. And it's also not occupied by individuals eligible for services provided under the Lanterman Development Disability Service Act. So those stipulations are within the target population definition, of which this does not fit. Thanks.
So I would be interested in a little more information on the history, and I don't know whether that maybe will come out in the public hearing, or whether, when was this initiated, how many people has it had in the past, over what period of time, when did it get to 13, that kind of thing.
Okay, I know that it was, it became a sober living facility, I want to say in 1998, but the manager from the facility is here and could probably speak to more of the history and how many tenants have been there over time and any changes. So I'd welcome them to, once you're done with questions, to staff.
Yeah, if there's no more questions of staff, we can have the representative come up and speak.
Hello, my name is Sarah Cooper, and I'm the Executive Director over at SoberWorks, and I would love to give the history of our company. Basically, SoberWorks started back in 1998, and we did open the SLE at the Cortez House that same year, and we have always been at that capacity of 13 residents. We haven't changed since the very beginning, so that's been over 17 years of operating that way. I guess throughout the years, we've really worked on trying to build good relationships with the neighbors, along with just really working on just the professional development of our managers, because we do know it's really important there in the community. We have served over 500 women in that house alone over those 17 years. We do run, there are only 4 women's SLEs in the county of Santa Cruz, and SoberWorks does run 2 of them, one of them being the property over at Cortez Street. And then as far as we were talking a little bit about the stay, there is no maximum stay. We do ask for a minimum of 3 months, so that way we don't have that revolving door of residents. And it just can help with that peer support that we're really there for, is really just trying to create that environment for women who are really seeking help from drug and alcohol abuse and are just really willing to change. And we just feel that that structure of having that house and having that peer support group there really aids in that. We do drug tests, we do curfews, we do just kind of monitor that our residents are abiding by the local ordinances, local rules, along with our strict house guidelines that we have. Because with that many women living in a house, we do want to make sure that, you know, it is an enjoyable arrangement for everybody. As far as parking goes, we do understand that has been an issue. We do orientate all of our residents when they first come into the house, and also try and share that over and over with any residents or visitors that may be coming to the house. So it is a constant topic. And we've really tried to, you know, remedy any situations with parking as they come up. If we see a resident parking in a spot that, you know, might impact another neighbor, we always try and ask them to move. And we do ask that they park kind of around the surrounding neighborhood so that there's not a huge impact on Cortez Street. And the main thing, too, is that we definitely agree with all of the conditions that were already proposed. We really pride ourselves in running a well-managed house. We have regular staff meetings with our house managers. We do regular trainings. We have policies and procedures in place. We have incident reports. We have complaint forms that residents and the neighbors are welcome to use. We do have our office where we're open to any comments or any issues as they arise. And I guess that would probably be it to start.
Okay, anybody have questions for Ms. Cooper? Okay.
So I'll start.
Yes.
Do you have records? I know the maximum number of clients is 11.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have records of what your actual occupancy is over time?
Yes.
And tell me about it.
Sure, no problem. So we do keep a client file on each person that is there. And for the most part, it has been on average close to that 13, or those 11 residents. Because what usually happens is one will move out, and we will have somebody else on our waiting list ready to move in.
So you're basically full.
Yes, and currently I looked at our waiting list today, and we actually have 48 women on the waiting list for the women's SLEs. And it could be, even with those 13 beds available, it could be up to a 2-month wait.
What would the impact be if the maximum occupancy was reduced?
With that would increase the waiting limits, and that would also put other, you know, women and possibly the community at risk, just not having that support. So affordable housing is already a difficult topic for this area, and so that would just end up with more people not having a...
But you would continue the operation, it would just, the people would have to wait longer to get...
We're not sure. We really have to sit down and do the budget. And so after this hearing, we'd be able to really look at that, because we do have higher rents because it is in the Capitola area. So we would have to really look at how that impact is. If we were to keep the number as is, we'd be able to afford it. If we end up dropping it to a lower number, I don't know if that would be affordable to all of the population that are looking for services.
Last question, and others will have a chance. How many of the residents have their own cars?
We did look today, and it really fluctuates, but as of today, we have 6 residents that do have vehicles, including the managers.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to do comment.
I've got a question.
I mean,
I've got some questions. You have questions?
I don't have questions of the
Okay.
applicant.
I have questions.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you've worked with the neighbors before, so I would like to know what your understanding of where you're all supposed to park, the gals are supposed to park, and where they're not supposed to park. And
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the main thing is mainly it's been our management. Our house manager who has been on site has been really the one figuring out the spots. What we usually try and do is have people park along Sir Francis Avenue there because it's not in front of any houses. So that's where we've tried to put kind of the overflow parking if we do have, additional residents. And then we've also talked with a few of the neighbors, from my understanding from the manager, that it was okay to park there as long as we only had, one vehicle in one of the spots in front of the house.
thank you.
Ms. Cooper, I just have one question for you, and it has to do in regards to manager on site. Is there always a manager on site?
There isn't 24 hours a day, and that's one of those, the other problem with the definition of the care facility
Right.
is our managers actually work or go to school and do have outside lives. What we do require is that there's a manager there for our 6 o'clock check-in every day, and that there is somebody there overnight, because we do want to make sure that all the operations, go smoothly overnight, and they do check in for all the curfews to make sure that all the residents are adhering to that. So there is one manager on site in the evening hours.
All right, if that's for the questions for Ms. Cooper, I think we'll open up for public comment. And again, if we have some that want to step up to the podium, we'll give you 3 minutes to let us hear what you have to say. Anybody? There we go. And if you could please write your name and tell us who you are.
Good evening. My name is Mark Beatty, and my family resides across the street at 149 Cortez. My family has owned this home since 1977. Our family alone has witnessed many more incidents than the very few mentioned in the application from the Bogner home since their ownership of the property on 154 since the early 1980s. A few examples of the incidents witnessed in front of my home, which I share with my wife and 2 young boys over the last couple of years relating to the sober living home, have been public nudity, sex in vehicles, drug usage, drug deals, public intoxication, littering, constant speeding, excessive vehicles, and loitering due to the fact that males are not able to enter the home. I ask you, how would you feel if these issues occurred in front of your residential neighborhood home and you had young kids? First, the owner, Ed Bogner, in my opinion, sees the home as a moneymaker, bringing in up to $7,200 a month in rent, according to the SoberWorks website, and could care less about the neighbor's issues because he does not live there. Numerous attempts over the years to contact him about problems have fallen on deaf ears. Secondly, the SoberWorks home, which brings in an estimated $13,000 a month in outpatient fees, according to their website, has made minimal attempts to being a good neighbor. If I ran this type of business in a residential neighborhood, I would go out of my way to make sure I was extremely aware of being a good neighbor. If this business is allowed to continue operating in a residential neighborhood, which come to find out has been operating illegally without a permit, we as neighbors and residents of Capitola demand that there be changes in how it's operated immediately. I would propose the following conditions. No more than 8 residents, including the manager at any given time. Where did this arbitrary number of 13 come from? What single-family home in our entire neighborhood has 13 residents living in it? None. And we are expected to allow a sober living environment home with up to 13 adults and their 13 vehicles? An average family with this home size, I'd estimate, is having roughly 3 to 4 vehicles. I do not believe the committee took into serious consideration the amount of vehicles this home brings, along with the parking that happens with the entrance to Cortez Street Park, which is right next to the house. I frequently come home and have had no street parking in front of my house due to the park traffic. In addition, the house next to us is a second home. What happens if that house is sold? Where will those residents park? There's no vehicles parked there now. 2, I'd ask that they use their garage for parking their vehicles. And 3, I'd ask that the house manager actually live there and not just say they do.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you
Reed.
for your time, and please do not rubber stamp this. There are serious issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Esteemed Commissioners, my name is Janet Newman. My family owns 600 Park Avenue in Capitola. It's been in business here since 1965. I am familiar with maximum occupancy standards, and I'm here to make a point in favor of further restrictions on the use permit and 154 Cortez. Up to 13 unrelated adults in a former single-family home bring too many cars to a street already pretty much parked up during the day. Parking in the neighborhood is already especially scarce on nice park days. More residents relying on street parking leads to more folks circling the block looking for a spot and a noisier street. Second, I'm concerned about the many uses in the garage. It's storage, it's laundry, it's a smoking area. How about putting cars in it and not storage and not laundry and not smoking? It would take some cars off the street and the garage could be used as a garage. I see no reason to favor smokers, and I see no reason to have that as a storage facility. When 154 Cortez caught fire on December 5th, 2013, 2 residents exited the building, but it was alert neighbors who called 911. The folks who live at 154 Cortez maybe don't feel quite so responsible for the property. Maybe that's because they're short-term compared with the rest of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you sign your... no, thank you.
Anybody else?
All right, name down. Hi, my name's Teela Williams, and I'm here to support SoberWorks. A little bit about myself, so I put some validity to what I'm saying. I'm a community organizer for United Way. I'm a commissioner with the Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention Commission. I'm also a standing committee member for the Resource Center for Nonviolence. And I started at that house in 2008. And I lived there for a year. And I moved from SoberWorks to United Way to all the work that I do in this community. And the work that I do in this community today has to do with inclusion. And I know that we're talking about parking. I get that. And I'm sure that SoberWorks, I know because I used to work there for a few years. I also trained the managers that are in place today. And what Sarah didn't mention is that they actually have monthly staff meetings where the managers are trained consistently on all the issues that come up. But what I know about SoberWorks is that they are dedicated to working to their community. And so if it's a matter of parking, I'm sure that there will be a solution found. But if it's a matter of inclusion, these people need a place to live. Sarah mentioned there's very limited low-income housing. There's very few places for families to be reunified with their children who are suffering from a disease. And it's not a pretty disease. And it takes time, and it takes effort, and people who care and show up and support to make these lives better. And I'm telling you, they get better. They show up and they become commissioners for your juvenile hall. They show up and they run substance use campaign for the entire county. They show up and they give back over and over. So this isn't about having a tie to a specific house. They have ties to the community. And when we invest in the people who live in those houses, they show up and they give back. And there's a few people on every street and every part of this community, entire county, that cause a few problems. There's teenagers with broken down cars and kids who are smoking weed, and I'm sure that the house has had a couple of problems. No more than any other house does. I know, I live there. I lived across the street from some of the people who talk to you right now. And I didn't have an issue with them, and when I managed the house for 2-3 years, we didn't have an issue.
All right, Ms. Frizz, I
you.
appreciate your time. Your time's run, but I appreciate your...
I didn't hear a buzzer. Stand next to the
That's right. Thanks, Ms. Williams.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Ellis, and I am the current housing coordinator. And I would like to say a few things about SoberWorks. I too had started at SoberWorks. I am in recovery myself, and I was able to reunify with my children because of what SoberWorks had given me. Today I'm vice chair for Community Action Board, and as well as I run the managers meeting monthly on a regular schedule. And we do, as a problem issues arises, we take initiative and we take care of those issues immediately. We would like to be agreeable upon all conditions and request for the permit use of Cortez. I can't say enough about what SoberWorks has done in many women's lives. There's reunification, there's reentry population. These are women that are trying to change their lives. They're working full-time jobs, they're going to school. We have a minimum requirement of 20 hours a week of work, volunteer, or education in each house, and they are meeting those requirements. And they're going above and beyond to reenter society today. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Enyo Materia. I live at 150 Cortez Street. I want to start by saying I don't want to make this... Okay, I'll do that in a minute. I don't want to make this about SoberWorks. I totally support what they do and their mission, and they've been fine neighbors as far as I'm concerned. It's about numbers of people, pure and simple in my opinion. So I would ask that we limit the number of people. Because keep in mind the park is there too. It is really difficult to park there. If I have visitors, I have to tell them to park in my driveway because there's not going to be a parking space available. And my house is listed as 3 parking spaces. There are not 3 parking spaces there. There are 2. So I just wanted to say I have no problem with my neighbors. They've been fine neighbors. It's the number of people. If there's any way to limit the number of people, I ask you please to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Materia. Sign in there.
Hi, my name is John Gerhard. I too very much admire the work that's done by SoberWorks. We certainly need that in our community. I would remind the board that this is a for-profit organization. It does good work and it makes a profit for its owners. And I suggest that a for-profit organization that's in the housing business needs to have reasonable density limits. I think 13 people in a 2,500-foot single-family house, 13 adults with their own lives, exceeds the reasonable limit. I think a smaller limit is indicated here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gerhard. Anybody else? I think she's just signing in, so if someone, yeah.
Hi, my name's Kathy Howard, and I live on Columbus. I have friends who've gone through this sober living house, and it's been very successful. So to me, the issue isn't that we provide a place for the rehabilitation. It is that we limit the amount of people that get to be there. Actually, our homes are 1.5-car garages. They aren't 2, whether they're listed that way or not. And so parking is an issue. Also, the activity is an issue. I knew a couple of the managers of that home that often would say, did you see so-and-so down the street? Because often people who aren't supposed to be associated with someone under their probation have their friends come 1.5 blocks away, come be with them, then they take off again. So it does make a different traffic flow for children, and the element that does hang out isn't always as nice as it could be. So I am for the rehabilitation home. I am for about 6 people besides the person who manages it. So I would like to see you limit the amount of people who get to live there.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Matera. I live at 150 Cortez. I'm the next door neighbor. I am going to reiterate points that have been made. I have no problem with these neighbors. These ladies are nice people as far as I've ever experienced. I will say that according to Zillow, it's a 5-bedroom, 2.5-bath house. 13 people, that's a lot of people. I'm not sure if that's really a therapeutic environment, but it's a lot of people in this home. The big problem, as the neighbors have been talking, is parking. Again, I'm not sure in the planning report, where they came up with 3 parking places in front of my home. There are 2 little parking places in front of my home. I think there maybe are 20 houses on Cortez Street. I'm estimating that there are maybe 40 parking places on Cortez Street. So if we have 13 people, this is America, everybody needs a car, everybody has to go to work. We have 13 people consuming parking places. That's 30% almost of our parking places for this one home. It's too intensive a use for the property. And as the previous speaker mentioned, you know, this isn't a charity that's running this property. Somebody is being exploited here. Besides the neighbors, I'd suggest that the ladies that live here don't really have a great environment to recover either. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Matera.
My name is Meg Beatty, and I live at 149 Cortez Street. And our relationship with the house has ebbed and flowed over the years. And I just want to make sure it's very clear. I believe in the mission of SoberWorks. I feel strongly about the good work that they do. However, it really is about numbers, about parking. As you've heard people say, I have 2 young boys. It's not just the cars, it's the speeding, and I understand people are in a hurry, but it's the guests speeding down the street, it's the residents speeding down the street, and they are trying to get to work, they are trying to get to check-in, they are trying to get to their meetings. And in addition, there is a lot of activity which ebbs and flows about a block away, about half a block away, in terms of pickup and drop-off without the eyes of the house manager seeing. Now, this does ebb and flow throughout the years. However, I strongly believe limiting the numbers limits the exposure all across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beatty.
Hi, I'm Shelly Curtis, and I live at 145 Cortez. And I've only been there for 2 months, and so here I am walking into a situation that is affecting me. Two things I was thinking about: my property taxes that I'm paying, and when I think about paying as many property taxes as I do, that it should be an equality of parking throughout the street or the neighborhood. So I was thinking about that, and I would really appreciate a limit of about 6 people in the home. I think that would ease up some of the parking with the park, with the parents, and certainly my family, and just share it a little bit, a little more equality.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Rhett Beaton. I live right across the street. The parking is one of the issues. Some of the other issues, I think some of the rules aren't being followed. I live right across the street. I see what happens. I'm not saying it's not a good thing. I've talked to some of the ladies, and they're super nice. They say hi, there's ghouls moving out. I've asked them, are you moving on a good thing? They say yes. That's great. That's what it's about. Moving on. 14, 13, way too many. 8 seems like a lot too for a big house like that. It's a lot. The reason why there's no parking in the garage, there's 3 fridges in there. It's a lot of stuff in there. You can't park in there. That would really help if they could park in there. We hear the fire alarm that they had to wire in after the fire go off almost every day. I don't know why. The little red car is not there when the fire alarm goes off. That's the house manager's car. I think there needs to be they need to watch them just a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dave McKinnon from 137 Cortez Street, Capitola, and I'm also a supporter of the program. However, I wanted to let you know, there's a letter that was dated June 25th from Sobriety. I wanted you to point out to bullet item number 5. Bullet item number 5 indicates that they have additional parking around the end on to the right on Cortez. That's actually where my residence is. And I wanted to let you guys know that it's a false statement in that we currently have 845 and 833 residents parking there already. So the place is already full. So I want to let you know, as far as the parking, it really isn't there in that fact. So just wanted that to be clear. Also, I wanted to ask you, do you guys remember that movie, or that actually TV show called 8 is Enough? Late 70s show. Well, all we're asking here is just to have a Van Patten, a Mr. Van Patten there all the time, and we're asking 8 is enough. I think that's what it can handle, and I think that's what you're hearing today. Now, I understand Sobriety Works. I heard about the business plan issue, about Mr. Bogner having $7,200 rental fee or whatever it was. That's really excessive. So the residents on Cortez Street are all willing to kind of participate and do our part. If the business plan doesn't work for 13 or doesn't work for 8, I really want Ed Bogner to step up and do his part too and help the business plan work with 8. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for hearing us this evening. My name is Nicole Cadle, and I work for Sobriety Works, as well as many other organizations in this community. I actually manage the other women's SLE that we have there, which is located in Santa Cruz on Lamonden Drive. In the time that I've worked with Sobriety Works, I have worked closely with the house manager of Cortez, going over rules and mindfulness and the different things that we do try to teach our women as they move into this house. And speaking to the subject that came up about the serenity of the space that these women live in because of the 13 people there. I know someone who lives there currently who's serving on the CCP board. I know someone else who is a month away from being reunified with their child. These women all have jobs, or they're attending school, or they're doing things that benefit their community on the daily. So from someone who's worked in that environment and has lived in a SoberWorks SLE for the last 18 months, and there are 12 women at my house, so it's not like there's a less capacity there. This is an organization that changes lives for women who are hoping to change their lives, and it does work if they're willing to put in the effort. And we don't have a 100% success rate. But for the women who come into our house and follow the rules and work on accountability, and they show up for themselves and for the community, there's a huge impact. And they are able to make change because of our mottos and because of the structure that SoberWorks does show up for their residents. We are allowed to have men visitors because that was brought up. There are visiting hours for family members and friends to attend, so we don't discriminate against men coming. They just are not allowed to live there. And there is a strict code for visitors that come over as well. They are not allowed to be loaded. And they do need to follow strict policies because children do come to the house and there is the park there. We aren't asking to increase the amount. Let me clarify that. We would like to maintain at the capacity we are currently at. And the garage is not used as a smoking space. There's 3 fridges there because we have that amount of people, and we want to include everyone and let them have a space so that they are treated like human beings and they all have proper storage space. And residents are not short-term in our facilities. 5 of the residents that live there have been there since it opened in February. I wouldn't call that short-term for this type of facility. SoberWorks is changing lives daily. And if we close this facility down, there's no chance to include these people and to continue giving them the support that this organization allows. I'm speaking from from a stance that SoberWorks changed my life. It gave me an opportunity that wasn't present in the community when I came out of the situation I was living in, and because of this, it changed my life. I work there now, I manage the house, and I see it change the lives of women on the daily. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sydney Beckeria. I reside at 146 Cortez Street, and we've been there for 16 years, 18 years, and we have been witness to many, many things that have gone on in that house. SoberWorks keeps mentioning that there are 2 house mothers. I was told by one of them that she doesn't even live there. She only comes when she just stops by. The community service officer was at the house because of the SoberWorks, and when she was speaking to me, she spoke of the 13 women that can live there, and then the community service operator said something, and she said we could have up to 33 living there if we chose. I don't see her here tonight. She lives in Live Oak, and so I'd just like to ask if there are 2 managers, where are they? And if you work, you all have jobs, where is the manager during the day if the other one isn't there? Because they're saying there's always someone there to watch and to make sure that these people follow rules. They don't follow rules. They park where they're not supposed to and say, that's not my car. And then they go move the car. And we're frankly just really overwhelmed with the number of people that are residing there. They don't make any attempt to know the neighbors. In the past, we've had thefts, we've had all kinds of things, and someone said to me, well, you can't prove that it was them. Well, yes, I can, because I had personalized shirts made. I own a boat, and this woman was walking by my house one day, and they were given to family and close friends. And I said, where did you get your sweatshirt? And she said, oh, a friend gave it to me. And I said, really? What friend? I don't know. Well, it was one of my sweatshirts. and come to find out it had been stolen 2 weeks before out of a truck that was parked in front of our home. So there you have it. A lower number would be much better. If we have to have them, we'd like 6 to 8. 13 is far too much for these 2 women to handle, or if there are 2 of them, handling them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Becker, and I live at 146 Cortez Street. I'm a real estate broker and property manager by trade. That house, if I were to rent it out to a standard family, would probably bring somewhere between $3,300 and $3,800 a month. $7,200 would be out of line even down in the Beach District. If I were to put tenants in there, 13, I wouldn't even consider it. 8 would be pushing the envelope. With what's going on there, SoberWorks, 8 would be fine if it's managed properly and the on-site managers are there. But they're not always there, as we've been telling you. So, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, if that's it for the public comments, I'll bring it back to...
I'd like to find out if Chief Escalante has anything to add to this, and if I'd like to know, if there have been any calls to the police department, and if so, how many, or what types, or...
So good evening, Commissioners. Rudy Escalante, your Chief of Police. At the request of staff, I did look at some calls for service the year prior to the fire. From January 13th up to, we had 6 calls for service there. Since beginning of this year, we've had 3. None of those have resulted in any arrests. Most of those were for disturbances and a traffic issue and suspicious persons. 2 of them were reported by the house manager. So that's what I have as far as calls for service. I did not go back all the way to when they started, so I don't have any other information there. It's hard to make a comparison because we don't have another house like that, same size, same amount of conditions. We did work with the planning staff to develop some conditions to address as many concerns as that we could come up with. And so that's what staff has worked on to present to you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Chief. All right, I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion.
Okay, who wants to... So are we going to... I was thinking that we wanted to start talking about parking first, but it seems like we need to talk about numbers or how the house is operated first, and then get into parking.
Well, I think probably the parking ties into the whole thing, but I'll leave it up to you to just comments.
Go for it. Okay, I'll go for it.
Can I speak?
I think he closed the public hearing.
Well, we closed the public hearing. Is it something different than we've already heard, or you just...
Is it the owner?
It's the owner of SoberWorks.
Okay. We'll make exception, let you come in and talk.
Ray Lamonden, CEO of SoberWorks.
I'm sorry, sir, I didn't get what was your name?
Ray Lamonden.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. We pay rent for 154 Cortez, I believe 34 or 32? $3,400 a month rent. We do not pay 72. The house has never shown a profit in the 17 years that we've had it. It's a break-even deal. So I would like to kind of tone down the fact that somebody is making a whole lot of money off of this. It's not It's not true, and we have records to back it up if you would like to see them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, questions?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Would you mind taking a question or two?
Sure.
So you have right now a maximum of 11 people, and you have 2 managers.
Correct.
That work there. If you had a smaller number of residents, could that be done with 1 manager
No, we have to have 2 managers.
living there?
Yes.
So do the 2 managers live there?
Yes,
or
they do.
both
They're
live-
full-time residents.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, I can't start open up to, thank you.
So the 2 managers do live on site, even though they might have a job or be going to school, so they're not there 24/7.
They're not there 24/7. That's true.
Thank you.
And
Wanted to
the
understand.
reason we have 2 is if one manager wants to be off for a couple of days, we have a backup. There's not 2 there constantly, but there is always 1, but not during the hours between 8 in the morning and 6 o'clock in the evening.
Sir?
More questions? Thank you. All right, I'll bring it back to the commissioners then to discuss. You want to continue?
Okay. Well, I will start off with parking, because it does seem to have a real impact on the neighborhood. And I will have to say I was a little off-put when I read the information that we got from Sobriety Living, that no one was going to park in the garage, because I think one of the reasons we require garages is to get cars off the street and give them a place to park. In looking at the plans, this particular garage is only 18 feet wide, so you probably would only park 1 car in there, which would leave plenty of space for them to still be able to do laundry and other activities. But it certainly seems to me that, 1 car ought to be parked on the street. And it certainly seemed to me that the 2 parking spaces in the driveway should be utilized before any parking on the street is utilized. And that they shouldn't be reserved for managers. They should just be used as, the first 2 available parking places, because as they've indicated, the managers aren't there all the time. And if I was a neighbor, I would be quite frustrated to see cars parking on the street when there's a vacant space in the driveway. So I would like to see, as I said, 1 car parked in the garage and at least 2 cars always parked in the driveway. And it doesn't matter to me whether they're managers' cars or residents' cars, but those spaces should be utilized almost all the time. I do have concerns about the number of people that are there. It seems to me that we've heard from the neighborhood, and we often actually do issue conditional use permits and have them come back to us for further review to see what impact that particular property is having on the neighborhood. And from listening to people, there is an impact there. I would be personally comfortable seeing more like a total of 10 people living in the house, which would be 2 managers and 8 clients. And I would certainly be willing to have, wording in the condition that the applicants could come back to the Planning Commission at a later date and reapply to have more. And at that point in time, it's all working well and we don't have any complaints from neighbors about parking or how the facility's being run, then, we could look at that and maybe, ultimately go up to 12 or something. But for right now, it would seem to me that 8 would be a good number of clients, and having the 2 managers there. I would also like to see something which clearly indicates that the managers are going to be on site at least from, 6 in the evening till 8 in the morning, which they've indicate they're doing right now, but it seems like that needs to be enforced a little more. I personally don't have concerns about there not being a manager there during the daytime, because it sounds like managers themselves are often recovering people, and they're trying to have other jobs or go to school as well. So those are things that I would need to see for me to go forward with approving this as a conditional use.
Okay.
I think all of us, I'll bet you there's not one person in this room that doesn't know someone or hasn't had a loved one who hasn't been affected by drug and alcohol use. So I don't think there's one person in this room that doesn't know the value of this kind of living situation. It's critical to our world. And yet, sitting up here, we need to take our whole community into account when we make decisions. And I feel like the balance, one woman said it right for me, and that was that when things like this happen and there's conflict, and there seems to be conflict, you can tell that there's an imbalance. The balance is off, and the balance is in the numbers probably, and possibly in the management, the expectations of the management. So if there really are two managers there at any given time, maybe there's only one manager living on site, as I understand it, one manager visits every day. If they're not there at the same time, I would be willing to go for 8 residents and 2 managers, as long as there aren't 2 manager cars there at the same time. But if there are, I would prefer that there were 7 residents and 2 managers. And I would prefer that there was management there almost 24 hours a day, and I don't quite know how that could work, but I think some visits during the day are important. That some management there during the day is very important. And I'd like to see this, if we give them a conditional use permit tonight, it be a 1-year conditional use permit, so we can come back and revisit this, see how it's working, and maybe make some changes at the time. Maybe it's changes in the House's favor. So I would be in favor of that. I think those are all my comments for right now.
Commissioner Newman?
So, welcome to being a planning commissioner. This is what it's all about when you've got 2 really important competing policies at work here. On the one hand, we do planning issues all the time, parking issues, density issues, etc. That's part of what we do. On the other hand, we've got a mission that everyone, even the neighbors, all the neighbors, have praised, and it's very important for our society. So we've got to figure out how to balance these 2 out. And tough job. So by way of preface, the other point I want to make is this was an extremely impressive public dialogue here. I don't think in my years as a planning commissioner I've ever heard the public on both sides present the issues in such a cogent, mature way. And so, I really want to commend everyone for the way they handled this and the way they are handling this, and I think everyone appreciates the conflict that's going on here. It's a difficult situation. One of the things that's going to make it better is that you're going to have a use permit in effect. So there's going to be more control. What's happened over the last 17 years is they've kind of had a pass. It slipped through the cracks for some reason. So you didn't have the use permit controls as strong, and the new conditions and all this is going to make it better for the neighbors. So that's a real plus right there. And use permits can be revoked if they're not complied with. You have a way, you have a better way if the things are not being handled the way they're supposed to be handled. So if this were coming, if we went back in time 17 years and this came before us, I really doubt that the Planning Commission would approve a 13-person use for that one house. Just having been on the Planning Commission for 10 years or so, I just don't think that would happen. So in a way, the company and the owner can say, we had a good 17-year run that's more than we probably would have had if we had come in for a use permit at the time, and it's probably going to get scaled back a little by the Planning Commission here tonight. I hear that from everyone. I think we've got to deal with the issue of parking in the garage, obviously. We've got to deal with the issue of making sure that the management does what they're supposed to do, and I'm sort of on the same page as everyone else here. We're in kind of the 8 to 10 range, it seems.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to concur much of what Commissioner Newman said. I want to thank everyone for coming, and again, it's been by both sides of this discussion, it's been mature, good information for all of us, and the tough part is actually coming down to just decide where we stand on this, because on one side you have the personal feelings that's drawn towards wanting to help our people who are in need, and I think, as you heard tonight, everyone supports that, but we also have a responsibility on the Commission to uphold some type of system within the city, and actually we have some pretty clear guidelines on conditional use permits, and a lot of that is actually framed around parking, the size and scale and character of the surrounding area. So it gives us some direction to go. Otherwise, it would be probably more difficult for us. I think what you hear is support for what you folks do at the sobriety living environment, but at the same time, some concern from the neighbors that we need to try to make this be appropriate for your neighborhood. So I'm in agreement with much of the other commissioners here that I think we need to help you folks out and get this sobriety living environment use permit, and that you operate appropriately, but meet the concerns of the neighborhood so it's not this type of apprehension. I wanted to thank the chief for coming tonight, because I think he adds element, but I think also that's an outreach that for the neighborhood not to forget is to understand the conditions and to reach out when you need assistance to make sure that we're meeting the conditions of this use permit if it's granted. So with that, I have nothing further to add. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll try a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion that we allow 7 residents in the unit in the house with 2 managers, who I hear are both live-in managers, that we require 1 parking space be available in the garage and 2 parking spaces always to be utilized, both in the garage, 1 in the garage and 2 others in the driveway first, rather than having them held open for managers. That we make this a 1-year conditional use permit and we review it in 1 year. And I hesitate to dictate hours of supervision to a business that knows the business better than we do, but it appears there's more supervision that is needed, and so I think that can be reviewed to see whether you folks have heard that and respond to that over this next year period of time. So I think I would leave that out of the motion. So that will be my motion.
Clarification, I assume you're incorporating the police chief's conditions and the other staff conditions.
Yeah, so these are the 1-year conditional use permit to come back to us would be an addition, and I think we're going to have to. Is one of the conditions the number of people here?
There was a whole set of conditions.
Yeah.
There's not one about number of people.
So we would add the number of people in and the number of managers in. We would add the language about the parking.
We have on the screen the conditions that Chief.
Okay. So would you consider amending your motion to, because when, I sort of look at the bedrooms and the layout of the house, if there are 8 residents in the house, that seems to work with their bedroom plan, and the 2 managers for a total of 10 people.
There's 5 bedrooms in the house.
There's actually 6 bedrooms. There's 1 downstairs.
I would like to hear what the other commissioners have to say about that.
So you're saying 8 plus
I'm
2?
8 plus 2.
Your motion was 7 plus 2?
Yeah.
Can I add a point of clarity? It's my understanding that the manager has a single bedroom, and the assistant manager actually shares one of the other spaces. So if you're to move towards that direction, if you want to limit it to two persons per room, I think that's where you were headed with that suggestion.
So that
Because if you allow...
that would be 7.
That would be
If
7.
you allow two, yeah. I wasn't really going to dictate to them how many people they could put in the room. I was
Okay.
going to eliminate sort of the total occupancy of the house.
Okay.
So it just seemed to me, I do agree that 13 people are way too many people there, and that, but I do have, empathy for the people running and providing this service, and I think it is one that is greatly needed in our culture these days. People do need a place to stay. So if we could try 8 for this 1 year that we're going to have the conditional use permit, that's sort of...
I can support that, because I think we can, if we're coming back in a year, I mean, we
Yeah.
can sort of ratchet our way down if necessary, rather than, it's probably not going to go back the other way,
Right.
so that's probably a good idea to...
So, and just as a correction, it would be 2 2-bedroom, because there are 6 bedrooms with the manager having their own room, so are you willing to admit?
I'm willing to, yes, I'm willing to.
So we have a motion.
And I'll second it then.
Okay, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Noes. All right, thank you very much.
You can all stay to hear about the housing development on 38th Avenue if you want.
So next, we're going to move to item
We'll give you a bye. You can get
5B.
out there.
Thank you, folks, for coming tonight.
Is there anything on the agenda after this
No.
item?
No, we have the
Climate action plans being
So
continued.
are they going to be, can we do the staff report or whatever
Yeah,
before we
any
do this? Because I'm going to
directors-
leave then, because I can't hear this item.
So we're just talking about, because he's going to leave, he has to recuse himself. Director's report,
Oh, no director's report.
commission comments, you got anything you want to add before?
But go to the Begonia Festival.
Yeah, remember this weekend's Begonia Festival, Sandcastles on Saturday, parade on Sunday.
Oh, okay,
Sports
yeah, I
shoes
think
on
I was aware of
Saturday, road
that.
voting on Monday.
We never know with you, we just, so we want to remind you.
Vote on Monday.
I heard about that someplace.
Oh, perfect.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, this allotment.
Okay, so we're going to move on with item 5B, 1575 38th Avenue, and staff report.
Okay, thank you. Before you this evening is a conceptual review application. Within a conceptual review, the applicant is given the opportunity to present a desired plan to the Planning Commission prior to submitting an actual application and receive feedback from the Planning Commission on the concept that is presented. Within this application, the applicant is proposing an 11-unit residential development. It includes 5 duplexes and 1 single-family home. Rather than create a condominium for the multifamily development with a shared open space and run by the HOA, the owner would like to subdivide the lots into individual parcels that may be individually owned and sold. The applicant is requesting guidance on the overall concept and whether the Planning Commission would like this application to be reviewed under the current zoning within the neighborhood commercial zone or as a planned development. So as you can see on the screen, this area where I have CN and I put the outline around it because it's orange, is on a corner. There's public facilities in green. There's community commercial towards 41st Avenue. To the south is residential zoning, and you also have the county residential zoning, and there's a PD just to the west of the Public Works facility there. So quite a mix of colors within 2 blocks. So I just want to highlight that this is an area with a variety of land uses, and this is the zoning map. This is the property as viewed from 38th Avenue. There's a single-story building to the north that was previously a massage business. To the south is a two-story storage facility. One characteristic of the site is the redwood trees along the south property line that you can see in the image. This is the view across the street. The cement block wall is part of the Orchard Supply Hardware, which will be redeveloped, and you'll see a new fence there shortly. And also Kings Plaza is located directly across the street from the development. So the wall of the back of that building on Kings Plaza is what looks across the street. And I believe, I know the mural further down is being repainted. So here is a picture of the building that is on site and the redwoods along the property line. There are a number of dilapidated buildings throughout the site. Within the proposal, all the buildings on the site will be removed. This is the proposed site plan. I've highlighted the location of the redwood trees in green. With the direction of the applicant, the city has hired an arborist to review the preliminary site plan and provide feedback on the influence of the development to the trees, on the trees. The study is not complete at this time, but we were out there this morning with the arborist, and he said any efforts to prevent soil compaction within the critical roots of the structure will prevent damage to the trees. So the only, in the site plan, it's James Allen is the arborist that reviewed this. So the one item on the site plan that he had concern with is a single-family home towards the back of the lot. He felt that working closely with the soils engineer to make sure that they can come to utilize some other standards for compaction, they could probably work with the critical root system under the majority of other trees. So possibly the removal of the second tree in from the back, or realigning the site plan for that single family. So here you have a close-up of the site plan, the 11 units that are numbered. There are 5 duplexes and 1 single-family home located along a private street. There's no minimum lot size within the neighborhood commercial zones. The owner would like to create individual parcels for each unit rather than a condo for the entire multifamily project. By doing so, the development within each of the lots has to comply with the CN development standards. So each structure, as proposed, complies with the height standards, the off-street parking standards, lot coverage, and landscaping. And here you can see in yellow, the duplexes do not comply with the side yard setback standards. And also the front yards, because the lots are not very deep, the applicant desires having a 10-foot setback from the street rather than the 15 required by code. So under the neighborhood commercial zoning, they would need variances for the areas in yellow and blue. Now for what the structures will look like. This is an elevation as viewed from 38th Avenue. As you can see, the residential homes are 2 stories. The front of the home relates to the street frontage with a front door, and each design incorporates a covered entryway. This is one of the duplexes as viewed from within the development. Tandem parking is proposed within each of the units, and so the front facade from 38th, actually they won't see the parking either, so this is as viewed from the internal street. And then this is an image of the single-family home, again tandem parking in a 2-story design. Okay, so now for the big question for this evening is process. So part of the conceptual review is to receive feedback from the Planning Commission on how you would like this application to be processed. There are 2 options. As highlighted before, the product the applicant is proposing does not fit perfectly under neighborhood commercial zoning. To have the current plan approved, it would require a variance for the front and side yard setbacks. As I highlighted in green, the Planning Commission must make findings that there is a special circumstance applicable to the property. In creating a new subdivision on a flat lot, making findings for a variance can be difficult. The special circumstances I do see tied with this lot are the redwood trees that are existing and possibly wanting a site plan that steps further, from the site plan, from the trees. The other option is a planned development, and within the code, the planned development allows variation from the code. There is a requirement within the code for a 4-acre minimum, but you're allowed to go below the 4-acre minimum if you do a site suitability analysis that makes findings that due to the historical character, the topography, the land use, or the landscape features, that the variation from the code and the planned development is could be supported. Within this application, because there is such a variety of land use, it's really a transitional area from commercial to residential. You could likely utilize make a finding for suitability for a planned development under land use. And then the applicant had asked me to have this available during their discussion this evening. So with that, that concludes my presentation this evening, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for staff?
No. Has the applicant seen Mr. Au's letter?
Oh.
Yes. Okay, with that, well, if the applicant would like to speak.
Good evening, Matthew Thompson, Thatcher and Thompson Architects. I'm here to share some thoughts with you about this this evening. I think just a couple of introductory comments, if you will. I think that this kind of development, what we call a small lot subdivision, is a really good use for this property in what is clearly a delightfully mixed-use neighborhood. I think in the materials that we submitted, we pointed out that this has a very high walk score, that this is a neighborhood where you literally could live without a car. You can get everything that you need within walking distance, and you can walk to a transit center for everything else, which is an exceptional kind of circumstance to find in our community. So I think that the notion that this is an appropriate place for folks to live and live well is right on target. I happen to live in a neighborhood myself for the last 17 years where lots are this size, houses are this size. Ours is a little bit bigger. Cypress Park has 30 houses and 20 apartments, so it's a little bit bigger, but the front yards are the same size, the garages are the same size, and Linda and I find this a wonderful way to live because we don't have a big yard to take care of, and it's a tight, very friendly kind of neighborhood environment. So I'm clearly an advocate for this kind of neighborhood, and I think it's very appropriate in a mixed neighborhood like this. So now back to the question of the evening, which is what's the right planning tool to process this? And over the years I've been a big fan of planned developments, and certainly there wouldn't be anything wrong with that approach. However, I think it's just a lot of work for nothing, because quite frankly here, let's look at the nature of the variances that are being requested if you go through a variance process. The variances only affect the buildings internally. So we're not asking for a variance that has any impact on adjoining properties or on the street frontage. The variances are only about things that would affect the internal street. So the front yard setbacks aren't front yard setbacks to 38th, they're front yard setbacks to the internal driveway. The side yard setbacks aren't side yard setbacks to a neighbor to the property, they're setbacks to the internal neighbors that we connect two houses together in a duplex kind of format. So this is a variance that's, if you will, very internal. And then I think the other thing to keep in mind is that even using the PD requires us to make a variance from the PD. I don't think we're getting anywhere with this. But I think you actually can make the findings for a variance. I think that the special circumstance is that this is, in fact, a fantastically various mixed-use neighborhood, and the zoning that applies to this property couldn't possibly embrace everything that's going on in this neighborhood. So I don't think that it's a stretch at all to say that the special circumstance really has to do with the variety that already exists on 38th Avenue. A regional shopping center on one side and a delightful little neighborhood on the other, and everybody, I think, is going to get along just fine. And the reason I asked this map to be put up here is that one of the really important variance findings is that it's not a grant of special privilege, because that is the soft underbelly of zoning, is that we've got to always be fair and be careful not to grant a special privilege to someone. But here on the far right-hand side of the map on the screen there at Bromer is, in fact, a whole row of duplexes that have no setback at all between the houses, just like we're proposing, who have their automobile access from a private drive on the, in your case, on the left-hand side, the north side. So what we have at the other end of the block, not just in the vicinity, but on the same block, we have a development that has all of the qualities that we are asking to be varied for here. It's not an exception at all. It already exists in the neighborhood. And so my recommendation is take the straightforward approach and accept these as variances without having to go through a rezoning process. I mean, it's going to have to go to the council anyway. It's not like this is any great shortcut. But I think it's an entirely reasonable way to approach this, and it's, quite frankly, a little bit shorter, a little bit easier for folks. So that's it.
Can I ask?
Yes, sure. Go ahead, yes.
So I understand why you don't want to go the whole condominium route, because that brings in a whole nother can of worms. But will there be like a homeowners association or something? Because
Yes.
you are building quite close duplexes and quite close, and you don't want people fighting about what color they paint their house.
Sure. Sure. We've learned a few things. We've been doing these for about 25 years now, and I meant to mention this. There are two small lot projects that we've done in the past that I would encourage you to go check out, because you're going to get this back in a few weeks anyway. One is called Roosevelt Terrace, and it's off of Broadway in the city of Santa Cruz. And it's useful to look at because it has the same dimensions for the private driveway that essentially has sidewalks built into it, so that it has I think, a very appropriate scale. Now, Roosevelt Terrace has smaller lots, and some of the houses are smaller, so it's not an exact match. But the other thing that's important about it is that the front yards are part of the common area landscaping. And we found this to be something that is oftentimes very important. It means that there's one gardening service that takes care of everybody's front yards, and they always look great. So there is a homeowners association. Mostly what they do is it's like more like a road association. They take care of the road, and they take care of the front yard landscaping. But people own their own lot. They own their own home. Right up to the 1-inch airspace between them and their duplex neighbor. So it has all of the qualities of home ownership. You own your house, you own your land, but the CC&Rs also strictly prohibit the expansion. You can't add on. And people, when they buy these houses, have to know that. You don't get to add another floor or add on. It's already used up. But again, we've been doing this a long time. That's never been a problem, because people get it.
Okay.
I have a question. So how do you propose to inform and notify the purchasers about living across the street from backs of fairly noisy commercial buildings? Because there's a lot of noise on 38th.
Sure. Apparently, and Joe, you might know more.
You need to come up and introduce yourself, even though we all know you.
Yeah.
Joe Appenrod, I'm the applicant.
The Owls, when they negotiated with the previous owner, when they did their proposal, they recorded a noise, odor, and light easement. And so that goes with the land. So whoever buys a property will see and they acknowledge that they live across from a shopping center and that there are no noises, odor, and light.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the other place I was going to suggest you check out is the neighborhood that I live in. And what's interesting there is that I've become a real fan of the 10-foot front yard, which is what we've included here. And Cypress Park has 10-foot front yards for all the houses. And it's only different in the sense that it has a public city street instead of a private drive. But the scale of the houses, the scale of the front yard, distance between buildings is, again, very similar.
Good. Very good. Is there anybody else that would like to address us on this issue? No? All right, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Well, I think it's good to see that there are no neighbors who seem to be opposed to this. Thank God. And I don't have a problem with this application. I think the location, where it is, these are appropriate variances. I know this development will be done well because I know the work of the people who are doing it, so I know it's going to be something that we can be proud of in Capitola. It'll be maintained well. It will be an area in Capitola that we can point to as really good development for years to come. And, our bad that we haven't zoned it retail. I would prefer it commercial, but our bad. We didn't zone it that way. So, you get to make this application, and I'm in support of it.
Yeah, and I don't really have a strong preference about how you process the application. I defer a little bit to the staff because they are going to have to deal with it. I have a little anxiety, about the variance process, but I'm certain that someone can come up with great reasons why those variances ought to be granted that I can live with, because I do like the project. I think it's a good use of the land. I think for the residential neighborhood behind it, this is much more compatible than the prior project that was considered on this site.
Or any retail for anything.
So I think it's a great project, and I look forward to seeing it, come back to the Planning Commission in however way you all decide that you want to process it.
Yeah, I thank you for the presentation. It's very compelling. I think I was probably the only person who supported the past project as a plan development, and my concern was I really couldn't do it for this one based on, is laid out as far as we had in our general plan on the first one. So I'm glad to hear that you were not really pressing that component of it. And having said that, I do have a little bit of concern about excuse me, the variances on the front. Obviously not so much for the side yard setback, because I totally get that. I think the project's a nice project. I think it's very well designed. I would like to see something else in that property, but having said that, I think it's a fine job, and I don't have finally to say that really an issue with it. I think I could approve this type of plan. So there's really no motion tonight, right? Because we're just trying to get consent, and so it sounds like you have consent from at least 3.
Okay.
Well, we're trying to maybe get some direction to suggest to the council variance versus PD rezoning.
I prefer variances.
Variances work for me.
Just so you know, I think in we have a structure fire on Capitola Avenue. I just was, we as a planning commission just recommended to do away with the plan development as a zoning tool in the future. So that kind of shows the stance of where we're looking at. So I would go the variance route.
Linda Smith provided some comments that I thought I would share so that the applicant hears more from all planning commissioners. She said she would, in terms of The variances, she would rather see this project as dense as it is and not decrease density in order to make setbacks. So I think you're hearing support there. And she thought that in the future we should probably remove single-family from the allowances within that zone. Also, when reviewing the previous application for the site, she said we emphasized the desire for mixed-use frontage along 38th. The application has no current mixed use nor allowance for any future conversion to mixed use. She's concerned that the 2 units whose front doors face the back of Orchard Supply will result in complaints about the normal operations of a commercial business. And then also, she had a third point that in our recommendation to City Council for elimination of the PD ordinance, we felt that the community really wants for its projects to meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance. The parcel is a good example of a parcel that has the potential to significantly impact future development of the surrounding property, and that we need to develop appropriate transitional areas between commercial and residential uses to create reasonable opportunities for increased density in the right locations. So that was a little bit of general feedback, but also it sounds like support towards a variance rather than decreasing density. And we'll take this to City Council on September 24th.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Good luck.
So before we adjourn, I have an issue I think we were a little remiss on. On the house on Cortez, we didn't make any provisions for them reducing the number of people who were there. And like they currently have 13 residents, in the house. At what point, how do they step down? Are we asking them to just kick everybody out tomorrow? Or, which I don't think we are. So I think we would like to give some guidance to staff to work out a transition plan that because they said 3 months was their...
They said 2 to 3 months they had the...
Right.
A turnover.
They had a turnover. So if we could work out a 3-month transitional plan, so at the end of, 3 months, they were down to 8 people, we would be comfortable with that.
That's great.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I just forgot all about it.
Thank you. And the other thing I think I'd like to, which we've never really looked at, but when we get a letter from an adjoining neighbor, either in support of an application or against it, it would be really good to know whether that is the owner of that property or a renter of that property.
I'll make sure I get those later on.
We've really never done that, but I think it's, good.
Yeah.
So no director's report, Commissioner Communications?
We already did that.
Yeah, we're good. So we're adjourned until the October meeting, right?
Yes,
October 1st.
October 1st. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.